I'm Anuja Koekar. Now we are starting with the introduction of a database management system, and we start data abstraction. For the system to be usable, it must retrieve data efficiently. The need for efficiency has led designers to use complex data structures to represent data in the database. Since many database systems users are not computer trained, developers hide the complexity from the users through several levels of abstraction. To simplify users' interaction with the system, there are three levels of data abstraction. First one is the physical level, logical level, and view level. This is the architecture of how the levels are work. Now, physical level, the lowest level of the data abstraction, which describes how the data are actually stored in the database, and the physical level describes the complex low-level data structures in detail. Logical level, the next higher level of abstraction, describes what data are stored in the database and what relationships exist among those data. Database administrators, who must decide what information to keep in the database, use the logical level of abstraction. View level, the highest level of the data abstraction, describes the only part of the entire database. The view level of the abstraction exists to simplify the user's interaction with the system. The system may provide a many views for the same database. Database terminology. First one is the data independence. It is defined it is defined as a property of a database management system that helps you to change the database schema at one level of a database system without requiring to change the schema at the next higher level. Data independence helps you to keep the data separated from all the programs that make use of it. The second, instance or a database state or a snapshot. Databases change over a time as the information is inserted and deleted. Means the data is continuously updated in the database. The collection of information stored in the database at a particular moment is called as the instance of the database. Now the schema. The overall design of the database is called as the database schema. Now the database management system architecture. There are mainly three types of a database architecture: one tier architecture, two tier architecture, and three tier architecture. In one tier architecture, the database is directly available to the user. The user can directly sit on the database management system and use it. That is, the client server and the database all present on the same machine. For example, to learn SQL, we set up a SQL server and the database on the local system. Sometimes it may be referred as a centralized system with a single user system. Now this is basically the architecture which shows how the data is get stored in the system. So two-tier architecture. The two-tier architecture is similar to the basic client-server model. The application at the client end directly communicates with the database at the server side. APIs like ODBC, Java development, Java database controller are used for this interaction. The server side is responsible for providing query processing and transaction management functionality. On the client side, the user interfaces and application programs are built. The application on the client side establishes a connection with the server side in order to communicate with the database management system. An advantage of this system is that the maintenance and understanding are easier, compatible with the existing system, and however, this model gives poor performance when they are in a large number of users. Now the three-tier architecture. In this type, there is another layer between the client and the server. The client does not directly communicate with the server. Instead, it interacts with an application server, which further communicates with the database system, and then the query processing and the transaction management takes place. This intermediate layer acts as a medium for the exchange of a partially processed data between the server and the client. This type of architecture is used in the case of a large web application. Now the advantages of the three-tier architecture. First one, enhanced scalability due to distributed deployment of application server. Now, individual connections need not to be made between the client and server. Data integrity, it mentioned since there is a middle layer between the client and the server. Data corruption can be avoided and removed. Security is improved. This type of model prevents the direct interaction of the client with the server, thereby reducing the access to the unauthorized data. The server system architecture. The server systems can be broadly categorized as the transaction servers and data servers. Transaction server systems, also called a query server system, provide an interface to which clients can send requests to perform an action, in a response to which they execute the action and send back said results to the client. Usually, clients' machines ship transactions to the server system, which those transactions are executed and results are shipped back to the client that are in charge of displaying the data. A request may be specified by using the SQL or through a specialized application program interface. Now the data server system allows client to interact with the server by making requests to read or update data in units such as files or pages. For example, file servers provides a file system interface where clients can create, update, read and delete files. Data servers for a database system offer much more functionality. They support units of a data such as pages, tuples or objects that are smaller than a file. They provide indexing facilities for the data and provide transaction facilities so that the data are never left in an inconsistent state if a client machine or a process fails. Now, the classification of a database management system. There are several criteria for this classification. The first one is the classification based on a data model. There are two types of a data model, relational data model and object oriented data model. Second one is the classification based on a user numbers. First in a single user system, multiple user system. Now classification based on a database distribution. There are two main ways: data is distributed, centralized and distributed. And now the distributed is also classified in two types, homogeneous and heterogeneous. Now this is how the single user system is architecture is all happen, and this is the multiple user system. Now we are ending this video. Thank you.